Welcome to the podcast. Súbele volumen. Conversation with the people who were with me. In the world of TV. Carlos Tonight. Historias de un reportero. Carlos Tonight. Dale que viene lo bueno.
Hey everyone, welcome to the podcast, and thank you so much for watching and of course for listening. I really appreciate that. And before we get things started, I want to invite you to check out my website. That's carlostonight.com for the very latest on the podcast, see upcoming guests, and check out past episodes. That's carlostonight.com. Well, you know, the Oscars are coming up, and I love the movies. And this week, my guest, she also loves the movies. Her name is Chana Studley. She's a life coach, a successful author, and an Academy Award winner. Joining me now from Jerusalem. How's it going? How are you?
Hi, good morning. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thanks so much for taking the time to talk to us. I appreciate that. How are you?
I'm great. It's early in the morning. The sun is shining. I'm feeling good. Thank you.
Awesome. Good to have you here. And so today we're going to be talking about your Oscar award-winning work, the one and only John Travolta, and your coaching. But first, I want to talk about you as an author. And you write about a lot of what some people may consider sensitive topics. And one of them is PTSD. What led you to write that first book about PTSD?
Well, I experienced a lot of trauma in my 20s, back in the early 1980s. I grew up in England. I was at college in Manchester in the north of England, a university. And I was actually mugged 3 times. The first time was when I was in college. I was at a nightclub. It's dark, everybody's dancing, there's lots of confusion and music and loudness. And a young man wanted to dance with me. I didn't know who he was, so I kind of pushed him away. And the next thing I know is his hand on the back of my head, and he smashed my head into a concrete pillar on the side of the dance floor and fractured my skull right here. I know you can't see it, but I can put my finger right on where the bone came back together. I recovered from that one. It was kind of what happens when you're a student, you know, well, in my community anyway. We were all punk rockers at the time. And then about 3 years later, I was walking about 6 o'clock in the evening near where I'd been living for a long time. And 3 men came out of the darkness, slammed me on the ground, beat the living daylights out of me. I think they were looking for money. I thought I was going to die. I can remember hearing myself screaming and thinking, if I can't catch another breath, I'm going to die. If they have a knife, I'm going to die. It was absolutely terrifying. And like I said, it was the early 1980s, so PTSD wasn't even a diagnosis. It may have just gone into the books at that time. So in the north of England, all I got was a cup of tea. You were walk it off and go home. That was my treatment. Oh, wow. So for the next 10 years, really, I suffered with reliving the events, reliving the torture of just going out my house. And I'd say about a year after that event, I decided to move down to London. I was starting my career in the entertainment business. And I was trying to make a fresh start. And one night I was riding my bicycle home from the theatre. We'd been setting up the production for the next day, I think. And about 10 o'clock in the evening, and I noticed this young kid. He was about 16 years old. And I noticed he was on a bicycle that was way too small for him, like a 5-year-old's bike. And the next thing I knew, the bike came flying out the air at me. I took the impact in my neck and shoulders. He knocked me into the path of oncoming traffic. I mean, how a car didn't run me over, I don't know. But then he made off with my bike, and he sold it for about $70 the next day, I found out. Wow. But he actually broke my neck. It was C2 and C3. They're the vertebrae just below the skull. They were cracked through. Thank God, not the spinal cord. But that was it. That kind of compounded. I felt very unsafe in the world, very scared, terrified to leave the house because I knew something was going to happen to me. It's like, right? I had police reports and x-rays to prove it. The world's a dangerous place. And I went down very hard that third time. And it wasn't till a group of women from a crisis center really helped me, and they got me back on my feet, and they started helping me to see that I'm not my story. And so that kind of set me on a journey of personal transformation and self-help and training to be, a coach and a counselor. And it was years later, it was about 6 years ago, which is 30 years after those events, that I started to write. And I decided to put those stories into a novel, because I found, I mean, I'm weird. I like reading research, but
Right.
not everybody does. And there's so much good information out there that people aren't hearing. So I decided to put all that information and my experiences into novels. So the first one's about trauma and recovering and going on to have this amazing Hollywood career.
Mm-hmm.
The second one is about chronic pain, because I did have a lot of pain as a result of those injuries.
Mm-hmm.
And the most recent one is about hormones. It's a hormone adventure novel. So yes, they are sensitive subjects,
Mm-hmm.
but the characters do the suffering and the falling down and the researching and the healing and the getting up and the happy endings.
Gotcha. Now, I've shared a personal story here on the podcast. I was involved in a big car accident 4 years ago, and then I also suffered PTSD, where just the screech of some tires on the road will set it off. And I remember in the beginning part, I would start to breathe heavily and kind of almost go into a panic mode.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of people may not know what PTSD or how it it impacts you. Did you have those same reactions
Yes.
and same feelings?
I did. After the first event, I kind of relived it, and I couldn't understand why people weren't more sympathetic, because what I find with PTSD is hypervigilance is one of the main symptoms of that. And we get very hypervigilant about sounds or smells or places or certain people. And my friends had moved on. They my injuries had healed, they moved on, and you're still in this kind of stuck place.
Yes.
in terms of your thinking. And then I kind of got over that one. But when the second one happened with the 3 guys who beat me, I had the same thing as you. I had the sound of footsteps behind me.
Mm-hmm.
That would freak me out. Even years later, when I was, that's why I said it lasted for over 10 years, because I'd now moved to California. I'm living in Los Angeles. I've got this great life working in Hollywood movies. And I could be walking on the beach, in Los Angeles, and it could just be someone jogging past me or a kid running for a bus. And I go,
Yeah.
And it might, because my nervous system had kind of learned how to respond, which when we're in a drama or in a crisis, that's a good thing. But with the problem with chronic situations is it becomes what they call maladaptive, and it starts to be unhelpful. And if you don't understand what's happening, we can freak out and think, oh my, as if it's happening again.
Mm-hmm.
And then we can feel stuck in that feeling. But it really is an illusion. That's what I've kind of discovered with my research and what I teach in my books, is that we've innocently got caught up in illusion, and it's almost become a habit. And then we're living in the feeling of the habit, feeling of the repetitive thinking, not in the actual situation, because that's over. That's in the past. Yeah. And we are actually safe, but our brain thinks we're in danger.
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
With this book, how does it feel being able to help people out there, like myself, who have, has had PTSD and or are probably going through it right now?
It's amazing. I get so many letters and emails, from people saying, thank you so much, because, you've articulated how I feel, or you described what I went through. And, the fact that I came out of it, I was helped, and I started to see that we're always feeling our thinking. And that there's so much freedom there, and to be able to share that with other people and watch their lives open up and blossom like mine did, it's such a blessing. I've got countless stories of people who are told that they were broken and they would live like this for the rest of their lives, and be on medication or treatments or even in hospitals for the rest of their lives, and to see them get well, it's incredible. I mean, what a gift. I feel very, very blessed to be able to share that.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Now, for 30 years, you've done life coaching, and now you're doing well-being. What's the difference between those two?
I think for me, what the difference is, when I was trained as a life coach, I was trained with very traditional techniques and methods and tools and tips and all those kind of things. And what I discovered is those techniques and tips, although they might be very useful in the moment, they're kind of temporary. They're not really long lasting. You have to keep going back to the journaling and the meditating and the expressive writing. And there's nothing wrong with those things. We if they help, that's amazing. We don't want people to suffer.
Right.
But what I've been taught more recently is to go further upstream and to understand how experience is created, and to see that everybody has innate health, everybody has well-being. And the only reason we're not in touch with that is because we've innocently got caught up in our thinking. It's kind of like when you learn to drive. You know, at first you have to have the driving instructor or your mom there, and you're like scared. But when you know how to drive, you don't need a teacher anymore. You're free and you have independence to go and do what you want. So my clients don't have to stay with me for long periods of time, because when they have an insight, when they shift in their thinking and they see that they are safe and that the event is in the past, or even if it's an ongoing, relationship situation, they're in a better state of mind to deal with it. And that's real freedom. Yeah.
Absolutely. What's your advice for people who, may be experiencing anxiety and how to overcome that? I know for me, breathing was a big help. Breathing, doing the whole type of thing, or maybe slower or whatever. That helped me a lot. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, I was trained as a trauma counselor. I'm a trained first responder, so breathing is definitely part of the picture. When someone's in a panic attack, when someone's even catatonic, if they've seen, an accident, or they've got into such a anxious state that they are not thinking straight, it's the brain needs oxygen. So slowing down the breathing, that is something very, very important. But what I'm working towards now is helping people before they get into such a state, because we want to triage. It's very good to know how to help someone when they're in that state, but we want to help people before they're falling down the mountain into that disaster. So what I share with people now is what really helped me is that we live in a thought created world. We're always feeling our thinking. So for the longest time, I thought the way I felt and my emotional state and everything was as a result of my circumstances or my past or my relationships or politics or the loud neighbors or you name it. I wanted to blame. I wanted to put the cause of it on the outside things. I know the word triggered is very popular these days, that things trigger me. But what I found out was that that's not actually possible, because if we're always feeling our thinking, then we live in our own thought-created realities, if you like. Because let's say you and I go to watch a movie. One of us might love it and the other one might be bored stiff. So it can't be the movie that's producing our experience. It's our thinking about it. And that's same true of sports and politics and the weather, where you go for your vacation. Some people like it, some people don't like it. So if we're only ever experiencing our thinking about things, even the past, even a traumatic thing, then the freedom that comes with that is that I'm not a victim of that anymore. When I understand that my thinking is constantly moving, and if I know I have innate well-being underneath that stinky thinking, then all I have to do is kind of like become aware, I got caught up in my thinking, come back to the moment where we are safe and our resilience is right there for us. That I found that I don't go into a panic attack anymore. I can have a funky day like anybody else. I'm human, but it doesn't develop into a full-blown attack anymore, or my chronic pain doesn't fire up anymore, because my nervous system has kind of calmed down, and that's become normal to me now.
That's awesome.
And so if I do get like a spike of something, it's like I don't want that, and it goes away.
Like, stay back.
Yeah, exactly.
Cool. Now, earlier you mentioned you lived in California. I lived in California for about 8 years reporting the news. You were on the film side. What was that like? Was it 20 years you were working in film?
Yeah. I had this about 20-year career in the entertainment business. I started out in the theater and then TV and then movies, which took me to California. It was amazing. I mean, it really was amazing. I got to fly around the world working with the most famous people. My first movie was with Steven Spielberg and Elizabeth Taylor. I mean, not too shabby.
Yeah, it's awesome.
I mean, I'd never been on a movie set before. I really didn't know what I was doing, but I winged it and made the best of it. And then, so that was the Flintstones. If you remember the first Flintstones movie.
Oh, yes.
Because I did special effects, so I was known for making animals, but in Flintstones, we made all the Dick to Bird and the Dino months, all the dinosaur stuff, which is kind of easy looking back because no one can tell you it's the wrong shade of green when you're making a monster.
Right.
Right? But then I went on to make copies of real animals. So any movie that had a talking animal in the 80s and 90s, I would have made it. Like Babe, we got an Academy Award for Babe. I did Dr. Dolittle with Eddie Murphy. I did an alien movie. Lots of those kind of things. George of the Jungle, I made a lion with Brendan Fraser. And then I made some angel wings for John Travolta. That's how I got to meet him.
Oh, cool. You mentioned all these people that are up for Oscars this year, which is really cool. Real quick, do you remember a show called Dinosaurs on ABC?
Yes.
A sitcom. Did you work on that?
I didn't, but my colleagues did. It's the same, like a branch of the same company. Like I was always freelance, but I mostly worked for Jim Henson's Creature Shop,
Awesome.
and I believe that Henson's made those puppets. Yeah.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you were talking about that. That's the first thing that came to mind.
Yeah.
The dinosaurs. Cool. So,
I know all the movie stars.
That's awesome. So tell us about being on the set of Babe.
On Babe, it was actually filmed in Australia. I was still living in London at the time, and so we built all the creatures in London and then shipped them out to Australia. It's funny, the book is actually set where I grew up in England, so it was kind of funny to go all the way halfway around the world to film it. But an Australian production company had bought the rights to the book, so that's Hollywood for you. So we fly halfway around the world to make a bit of Southern Australia look like a bit of Southern England.
Right.
And it was amazing. I mean, we were literally in fields for 6 months. They actually had a farm with all the animals. The pig that plays Babe, there were actually, if I remember right, 26 pigs that played Babe because pigs grow. And over 6 months, the pig at the beginning of the movie was too big for the end of the movie.
Okay.
And it was a female pig because boy pigs are not pretty from the behind. It's all this secret. So you find like Hollywood secrets behind the scenes. It was amazing. It was a lot of fun. Yeah, working with the animals as well.
And then when you all heard that you were nominated for an Academy Award, what was that feeling like, getting that news?
It was amazing. It really is. I mean, especially back then. I mean, the Academy Awards have kind of taken a different route now. It seems I don't even watch it much anymore. It seems a bit like a high school show to me now. But back in, it was still kind of the glory Hollywood days. I mean, it was to be counted in that. I mean, obviously, special effects is not the same as the actor department awards, but it does actually happen on the same night. I don't know if you know this, but there are 2 Academy Awards ceremonies. There's one that you see televised on television, and then there's the one that's for all the behind the scenes people. So our category actually happens on the night of with all the actors, so that's really special. And I did not get to go up and get the statue because they only have maximum of 4 names on a statue. So my boss and some of the digital people, they got to go up and go. But the feeling was, I was actually working on the movie with John Travolta at the time. And I remember William Hurt came up to me and congratulated me. And I'm like, oh,
that's so cool.
It was very cool. Being in an Oscar party with a film crew when you're on location is really, really fun. So, because everybody knows somebody who knows somebody, it's amazing. Yeah.
Oh yeah. It's just kind of like TV news where everyone knows everyone. And
yeah.
You work with this person and that person. And speaking of Texas, that's where I'm broadcasting from today. And
nice.
you mentioned that John Travolta was shooting. Was it Michael?
Yes, a movie called Michael. He plays an angel with William Hurt and Andy McDowell. And I don't know if you remember, it's like 20 years ago now, but I had to make his wings. And so I made several sets of wings and went to his house to fit them. He's such a wonderful person. He was very kind and very generous, very funny. So I spent many, many hours gluing these feathers, blending them into his skin, which you don't often see in the movie. It's amazing how much work goes in and doesn't actually, doesn't actually end up, on the screen. But yeah, we spent a lot of time together. And then we were filming a scene. I don't know if your viewers will remember this, but there's a scene when he collides with a bull, like on the horizon in the distance. So I had to be out there with him to set the wings because they kind of flip up as he runs towards the bull. And we were about a mile away from the film crew. So it's just me and him for like a day, you know, in a field in Texas, just outside Austin. And one time he started saying to me, you'd look really cool if you wore this, you know, he's designing me an outfit. And I took the chance and I said, if I wore that, would you dance with me? And he said, oh, I dance with you anytime, but not now. Action, you know, rushes off to do his thing. And then a few days later, we were filming a scene where he has to dance with a waitress, I think it is. So they have the playback of the music. I think it was Aretha Franklin or some great music. And he turned to me in front of the whole crew and said, now. And I'm like, what? He said, we're going to dance now. And it was like 2 o'clock in the morning in a field. And he was twirling me around. I honestly felt like Princess Diana of the White House. You know, I've got 70 guys watching. I wish I had a photograph of it, but it's, you know, it's one of my favorite memories because he was a gentleman. He was so kind and really polite and generous to everybody. You know, the locals had stood hours and hours and hours just watching, and he could have just gone back to his trailer and he would sign autographs for people. And the press weren't there. Nobody knew about that. He just was a really decent person. He still is, I'm sure. And so it was a great honor to spend that time with him. Yeah,
that's awesome. At what point in your career in Hollywood did you kind of realize I made it? Besides winning the Oscar, of course.
Yeah, I mean, that was our second movie for the Oscar, which was pretty good. You know, actually, the most special moment I ever had was actually on the first movie on the Flintstones. I was walking on the back lot at Universal Studios, still like, you know, in awe, like, I can't believe I'm here. And John Goodman, who played Fred Flintstone, he was walking by from his trailer back to the stage, and he went, "Hi, Hannah." And I thought, oh, John Goodman knows my name.
Oh, that's so cool.
He was also a really lovely person to work with, a lot of fun. I mean, that was on my first movie, and I felt like, I mean, I'd done a lot of theater and TV before I got there, but for someone to remember my name, you know, that was the first time it happened. And I think that's when I felt like I'd arrived. After that, you know, movie stars they all put their trousers on the same way everybody else does, as we say, you know. Absolutely. So, you know, beating Eddie Murphy and Steven Spielberg now, I'm like, oh yeah, whatever now.
Yeah. Do you miss it at all?
Not really. I mean, I had a great time. It lasted a long time. I left, you know, because I wanted to. I was ready to move on to something else. Stuart Little was the last movie. I actually turned it down because I really wanted to leave. I became a school teacher, if you can believe that. I left Hollywood to become a school teacher. And people often ask me, how did you go from doing special effects in Hollywood movies to coaching people with chronic pain, for example? And my quick answer is, it's all an illusion. You know, my whole career in Hollywood was about convincing you things were real that weren't, like a dog can talk or that Harry Potter can fly. Well, actually, Harry Potter can fly. You know, Daniel Radcliffe can. You know, we put him in a harness and off he goes. But a lot of the things with PTSD and trauma and chronic pain and hormone distress, it's the brain is creating illusions. And pain is the ultimate special effect because it's making us feel like there's something wrong with our bodies or that we're in danger, and we're really not. And so that's how I kind of see the connection now. It kind of, my Hollywood career kind of helped me with the work I'm doing now. And it's great to chat about that stuff because it gets people relaxed. And when the people are relaxed in a better mood, they're more open to new ideas and healing and getting better and letting go of that stuff. So yeah, I think to me, it's all connected. It's just smoothly gone from one thing to the other. And now writing books is, you know, just putting all that down onto paper for people to see behind the scenes. Yeah. Do
you ever get somebody asking you advice on working in Hollywood?
Not now, because it's been a while since I was there. Like all the people I worked with, I mean, behind the scenes, I don't know if they're still working. They might have moved on as well. But I think what the best advice that I got was to be yourself, and don't take no for an answer. And it really is about being in the right place at the right time, you know, because there are some incredibly talented people who don't seem to get a break. I felt very lucky that I got the break and I I mean, I was working in a very specialized niche kind of area, making talking animals. That's not really on the career advisors list when you're in high school.
Right.
So to get paid silly money and travel around the world doing that was actually incredible. That I got a chance to use the skills I have to be in that industry. But I think you kind of need a tough skin as well. There's, there's some really wonderful people, there's could be some backstabbing and some, all that kind of stuff happens as well, like in any other industry.
Yeah.
So you just kind of have to keep putting one foot in front of the other and show up and trust that. And also, I think the other advice which I would give is it's very seductive. And it's very easy to think you're only as good as your last project or the car you're driving or who you know or what you're working on. And that's not who we are. And I think that was one of the reasons why I was ready to leave, because I wanted to, do something that was, going to fill my spirit and my soul more than another Levi's commercial or something.
Right.
So
this
yeah,
is your next chapter.
Yeah, exactly. So if you are it's a wonderful business, but just remember who you really are. You're not the job. Yeah.
So any advice for anyone who wants to write a book?
Oh, get out. The best advice I was given by I had a neighbor in London who was a very successful romantic author. Those kind of corset busting. She wrote those kind of like romantic Mills and Boon novels. And she told me, she said, get out a pen and start writing. She said she's often asked, how do you be a successful author? She said, well, you start writing. Or if you want to be a successful actor, you start acting. Even if you're doing it for the local old people's home or just writing it and just your mom's going to see it. Now we have, self-publishing. So anybody can publish anything. It actually is free. It doesn't cost you any money. So, I'm like, open up a Google Doc or a Word document and start writing. It doesn't have to be perfect. You can go back and change it and go back and change it. I change things all the time, and thank God for spell check and editors. And it doesn't have to be perfect straight away, and don't have to start at the beginning. Even I started in the middle and then, filled in spaces afterwards with the first one. I actually find the writing part the easy part of it. The publishing, the editing, the formatting and all that stuff, uploading it, that can be a bit, trying at times. And when you're waiting on other people to edit it or give you reviews, that can be frustrating. So the writing to me is the easy part. I'm already halfway through my next one, and I've got ideas for 4, 5, and 6, which is almost frustrating because I trying to find the time to actually get them written. But I enjoy it. I love it. It's a great, awesome. Yeah.
And I saw that your books are doing real good on Amazon. Can you tell us a little bit about how we can purchase a book and find you?
Yeah. So I have 3 books. The first one is called The Myth of Low Self-Esteem. That's the one about trauma and recovery. And the second one is called Painless. And it's a novel about me recovering from chronic pain. 25 years of chronic pain I had, all gone now. And the latest one, which came out just a couple of weeks ago, is called Very Well. And that's the one about hormones. It's a story about a woman and her 2 daughters who go through all kinds of hormonal distress and come out the other side of it symptom-free. They're all on Amazon. So you can look up my name, Chana Studley, and those books. And they're there for you to enjoy.
And then you have a website too, right?
Yes, that's my name, chanastudley.com. It's spelled CHANASTUDLEY. And there you can see information about the books, about my programs, about my coaching. I do wellness retreats as well. I did one in Cape Cod last year. I'm doing one in Amsterdam this year, and speaking in conferences. So that's all on the website.
That's awesome. Thank you so much for joining me and sharing your story. I really appreciate it. And I know everyone will get a kick out of hearing your stories, especially those in Hollywood. So continue success and God bless you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Pleasure.
Historias de un reportero.